We have a pretty full agenda tonight. A couple of presentations. It'll be 7 o'clock. Just one more time for those of you that may have walked in after I said it. If you think you'd like to speak at all tonight during any of the public comment sessions, we do have a clipboard in the back to try to help us stay organized with you. If you can just fill that out, that would be helpful for us. We have determination of quorum, public. Call to order. You can all please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Yeah. It's fine.
Apologies, folks. We this one again was a last-minute change to this location, so we have a play that's taking place in the backyard theater community yards, and they were working on the stage, and so it's a quick setup for this meeting.
Pledge allegiance to Thank you all for coming tonight. We have a couple of presentations we're going to be sitting through and hearing about. The first one is our reopening presentation. That's under the superintendent's report. Dr. Massaro will lead us.
Hey, can everyone hear me okay? I'm going to take that as a yes. Thank you. All right. First off, I'd like to thank everyone for coming this evening. Clearly, this has been one of those different summers where we went into the summer with a tremendous amount of optimism as we saw things really open up in our society. And lots of people had wonderful summers, and we all enjoyed vacations like we hadn't had in a year and a half. And that felt really good. And it feels really good to be a part of a society and go out and enjoy dinners and enjoy some parties and things like that. And as you know, most recently, with the Delta variant coming about, we've seen an uptick in infection rates throughout the nation, throughout the state, and certainly in our county. And so this year has been just such a strange year for us. And we had said one of the things that was going to be our highest priority was coming back as normal as possible. And that absolutely 100% has been our goal in terms of our plan. Unfortunately, we didn't really have guidance. We didn't have guidance until very late. I'm going to share that with you. But once we did get some guidance, once we did have some information to share, we quickly engaged our reopening teams at the district level and at the individual building levels. And I want to thank those people that are here in the room that helped contribute to that. We have members from all of our associations, the leadership from our administrative association, Dr. Reggio, and our administrators, thank you for being here. Several of our teachers, and Mrs. Valentine is here representing the Senators Teachers Association. Thank you also for being here, and other teachers. Ms. Fish, thank you for being here from our Paraprofessional Association. And Ms. Murray is here as well. Thank you for being here from our Clerical Association. And I think it's a strong testament to say that, as a district, all of our unions, as well as our, administrative team, district office, and Board of Education, really pulled together and got behind a reopening plan that we can support for that we believe is good for our community. So I'll begin by saying that it's welcome back, and we are so excited to welcome back our students on September 9th. This is an odd year because we've got a couple of holidays built into the Labor Day weekend, So what we chose to do was bring back our teachers Wednesday and Thursday prior to a long weekend, and have a couple of conference days to prepare for the upcoming school year. Knowing that there might be some challenges, we kind of put some front-end staff conference days on so that we can prepare appropriately. But our students will be back on September 9th. As you walk around, you notice that there are some differences in the building. There are no more of those one-directional hallways and things like that seemed a little bit unnatural in the school setting. But we do anticipate a return to many of the normal components of what we consider successful schooling. All buildings are going to be in person fully for instruction for all students on a daily basis. Our hours of operation are 100% normal pre-pandemic. So there are no curtailed hours. We do not have the need because all of our students are encouraged to be in person, we do not have the need to provide alternative times for our teachers for remote instruction. Our clubs, our athletics, transportation, all of those things are going to resume. Field trips, all those kinds of things that we really value and that add so much to the school experience for our students are returning. And that's something to celebrate, something that we can be very, very happy about. We also, because of the infusion of some of the federal money that has come in through the a couple of different grants actually, we are going to be providing additional remediation and enrichment opportunities as we continue to navigate some of the effects, some of the perhaps negative effects that the pandemic caused. We do have some additional personnel in some of our support areas, as well as mental health support, additional social worker activity that's going to help us in the coming year. So some really good things, and we are so excited to start that school year. As I mentioned, guidance was not really forthcoming over the summer, which made planning somewhat challenging. You saw in June, and this slide I think is telling, provides a lot of information. In June of 2021, that's when we got our last updated guidance. And that was some guidance that helped us for some planning for our summer programming. And especially for those summer school programs and extended school year programs, when we were getting some infusion of some federal money, where we were actually able to increase our summer school offerings and our enrichment offerings over the summer programs. So that guidance came in June, and then in July, we had updated guidance that only pertained to those summer programs and some camps. CDC updated their guidance for COVID prevention on July 9th. July 28th, they issued additional guidance for interim public health recommendations for fully vaccinated people, and they started to create different rules for vaccinated versus unvaccinated people. July 29th, our new commissioner, clearly was a little bit frustrated and began penned a letter to New York State Education, to the New York State DOH, Department of Health, that is, demanding that they provide some kind of guidance for us. On August 2nd, former governor announced no further guidance will be given by New York State DOH, and he recommended following the CDC. Now, to us, that was extremely frustrating because we had the chief officer of New York State, the chief executive of New York State, saying, you know what, I'm out the door now, and I'm going to take my ball and go home and not issue guidance. And that was really, really frustrating for school officials. But on August 4th, we did receive a letter from the American Academy of Pediatrics. When this presentation is up, all of these documents, you see them in red. Those are highlighted, they're accessible, they're already on our website, but you'll be able to click them and see what all of this guidance and recommendations say. The day later, Jen Rosa, our commissioner, sent a letter to New York State Department of Health, Dr. Zucker, and she basically said, you need to send us some guidance on this. August 5th, the CDC updated their guidance for schools. So you have to figure, school ended at the end of June. And we didn't receive guidance until August 5th, telling us how we should open in September. So now began a time where I brought my team together and the administrative teams. We need to start having those conversations, reassembling our reopening teams, and doing our due diligence to see what is best and prudent for the opening of schools for the San Moriches students. First and foremost, our highest priority was to keep our school environment. And I'm going to go back for a second. I think that one of the things we learned through the pandemic, we learned a lot. And one of the things we did not want to do was lose the lessons that we learned in the pandemic planning for the coming school year. And what I mean by that is, hey, education wasn't education. And we all know that, and we know that there were kids who suffered through learning loss because of the fact that we were in a remote or hybrid environment for much of the school year. And we wanted to make sure that we can do better. And the way we need to do better is we need to come back stronger and more knowledgeable and more skilled as a school district in providing education for our kids from 11th to 12th grade. And what we can do by that is take what is tried and true in the traditional setting of education, and we can combine that with those lessons we learned and how to leverage technology resources to accelerate learning for kids and bring those two together so that we can provide a better product. And so I think that was important, and that was our priority, that how can we come back providing the highest quality education we can for our San Moriches students, while, again, recognizing that there is a global pandemic and we do need to place health and safety as a high priority. Oops, I'm sorry. Again, it wasn't until August 9th that and again, I was a part of that conversation with the Suffolk County Department of Health Services as the past president of Suffolk County School Superintendents. I have well-established relationships that enable me to try to have those conversations and leverage some of those conversations so that we can pressure our local Department of Health to issue guidance that is very clear for schools. New York State Education Department released a health and safety guide for schools in August 12th, 2021. And then just yesterday, the new governor, Kathy Hochul, made a statement that she is directing state health officials to impose a universal mask mandate in public and private schools. We anticipate that that is coming in the next week, but potentially as early as Friday. So what I would say about this coming school year, I want to look at this as a continuum, because I don't think that we can look at anything in isolation. I think we have to look at this as phase 5, if you will, of a long road that began in mid-March of 2020. Phase 0 was that D-Day. I remember coming back on March 2nd from Albany, and I was briefed by the New York State Department of Health about this thing called the coronavirus. We joked about how it was, to my knowledge, just a beer, coronavirus. And then all of a sudden, a week later, we were having, actually on the 3rd of March, we were having conversations internally about if we need to flip the switch to remote learning, what are we going to do with San Moriches? So starting those conversations early got us a leg up and got us a head start on making things happen quickly here at San Moriches. But by mid-March, we were shut down. We had to go 100% fully virtual. The unspeakable happened. And we, thanks to the resilience of our kids, thanks to the resilience of our families, and especially thanks to the resilience of our teachers, we did just that. And as a community, we didn't skip a beat. We supported each other, and we all came together. And that's the kind of thing that is remarkable about our community. Our community is a community that absolutely looks at the big picture, and I have to thank our community for the support that we've had over the past year, because the emails and comments that we've gotten have been that, we appreciate the fact that you weighed everything, you didn't make hasty decisions, you had kind of that slow, methodic approach to reopening, and it was done in a systematic way that ensured the health and safety. Would some people have liked to have seen us open a lot quicker? 100% yes. Would some people have liked to have seen us open a little bit slower? Absolutely. But I think that overall, what we tried to do was strike the balance between providing education we are 100% committed to, the balance in that public health system. So phase one in September, excuse me, that was the start of the new school year, and that saw us in a K-12 hybrid model. Nobody liked it. Nobody liked the alternate weekly schedule. Nobody liked shortened days. Nobody liked Wednesdays off for remote learning and deep cleaning. But that's what we did because that's what we knew. And so we did it. And we did the best we could. We learned more, and we took feedback from the community. And we, in October, during the middle of October, we went and we realized that we could do some things a little bit differently. We introduced barriers that we understood to be something that could be helpful. We took all the furniture, all the extra furniture out of every elementary classroom to push kids out to 6 feet, because that's what we knew at the time. And guess what? We were able to get the kids in 4 days a week, which was a help. 2.5 more days a week. And 6 to 12 was still come April, again, with a little bit more experience, with a little bit more knowledge, with a little bit better guidance, we started to look at what can we do for all students K-12 returning to in-person 5 days a week. And that was something that we put as a priority. Our community absolutely wanted it, and we got to that point, and we were happy to do it. In the summer of 2021, new guidance came out, and this was the point of complete optimism, where we had this idea that we can, because of our reduced capacity, because of things, we can actually take off the masks and invite kids into our schools. And that was something that we felt very, very strongly about. And we did, and we did it. And I have to say that that was something that looked like we were going in 100% the right direction. Unfortunately, there were situations that we've seen around the island where the Delta variant is something that's different than what we saw previously. I could say during the 2020-2021 school year, we didn't see school spread. We didn't see school spread because we were doing all of those things, taking the guidance, we were sticking to the guidance, and trying to adhere to it as best we could to ensure health and safety. Over the summer, when someone in one of our classes got COVID, unfortunately, every single person that was in that classroom. So we know that that was a circumstance that we could attribute likely to school spread. And what was different? There was a different variant, and there was one other factor that was different: masks. We didn't have masks. And so that was troubling for us, and we had to start to rethink that. But again, we were relying on guidance, and with the guidance for us. So now, here we are in September of 2021, and we're going to welcome back 1,502 students to a new school year, and we're planning for that. And so we are in phase 5, and we are very optimistic that phase 5 will be the last of the phases, or hopeful. The COVID safety guidelines, and some of these were in the memo, that came out are all here. The safety and well-being of the students, of course, is our highest priority, and our community and maintaining health and welfare of everyone in our community is a huge priority. So all the practices governing student, adult, and student and adult safety are aligned to these recommendations. The CDC, the Sub-County Department of Health, American Academy of Pediatrics, and New York State Department of Education. And so you will see that when you click on these, you'll be able to look at what all the guidance says, examine it, and understand that everything we've done in our reopening plan is aligned to these documents. These are some recent comments, actually within the last day, that came up. Governor Kathy Hochul came in her first day, and about 5 minutes into her press conference, after she was sworn in at midnight, and then a ceremonial swearing in at 10 a.m. At 3 o'clock, she had a press conference. And by 3:05, she made the comment that health officials are to impose a universal mask mandate in public and private schools. And so that was met with a couple of different comments. Andy Pallotta, the New York State Unified Teachers President, stated, "We support universal mask wearing as part of a layered mitigation strategy that also includes robust COVID testing, contact tracing, proper ventilation, and other strategies recommended by public health experts." And Charles Diedrich from New York State Council of School Superintendents stated, "We welcome Governor Hochul's decision to go forward with a statewide mask requirement for schools. Throughout the pandemic, we have asked state officials to give us clear rules on issues protecting the health of our students and our employees." I think it's important to have clear rules, because without clear rules, what I'm doing in Center Moriches could look very different than what's happening in East South Manor, in Woodswood, in Schenectady, New York, or Juneau, Alaska, for that. But when we have rules, and when we are asked to do what we're asked to do, and when, as a school leader, I put my hand up and I take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the state of New York and support the Center Moriches School District to the best of my ability, the rules help us because we know exactly what we said and what we have to do. So we are proposing, again, the following COVID safety protocols for the school year. Again, everything we are doing is to bring back as much normalcy as possible. As far as the masks go, it is my recommendation, and the recommendation of the reopening teams, to have 100% masking inside for all students and adults, except when eating, of course. Outdoors, there will be no requirement for masking. That's an individual choice. Some people will want to wear masks outdoors. And on buses, it is already a mandate right now. Like I said, we anticipate the indoor mandate coming soon, but for buses, it is a mandate for 100% masking at this point for all transportation. As far as barriers, air moves, and we learned that, and we know that barriers were an impediment to learning last year and did not serve a useful purpose in curbing the spread of COVID. So we are removing barriers. We are not putting barriers in between students and teachers. We had temperature checks. That was a mandate last year that everyone needed to be checked for temperatures. And what we knew, I'm not a health expert, I'm a doctor, but I can prescribe books only. But what we knew was that temperature checks didn't seem to be aligned to anything we were seeing. Kids who had COVID came in and, even if they tested positive after coming to school, they were not children that demonstrated temperatures. So we did not feel that that was reliable. We still no longer feel that there's a strong correlation there. So we're not doing the temperature checks. The health attestations, well, it's seeming like a good exercise, also did not provide us good information. As far as quarantines go, we believe that quarantines will be much less likely this year, and they will not be necessary. And I have a slide to demonstrate this in a little while. They will not be necessary if masks are worn properly. Lockers will be used at the middle school and high school. Social distancing. Students and adults will maintain 3 feet of distance at all times in the school setting, and that's manageable. We can do that. Students in the elementary school can still sit in groups and maintain 3 feet of distancing and do collaborative work. That's back. That's getting back to normal, and that's what we want to see. We want to see kids interacting, working together, collaborating, doing all of those 21st century skills that we know mean a lot to their education. The mandate for distancing in music, and that's projecting in chorus and wind instruments, is 6 feet. And eating and sharing food is also 6 feet distance and recreation. As far as hygiene, we are keeping lots of hand washing, all those extra turns around, cleaning knobs, wiping custodial staff, and wiping tables, all that kind of stuff will be things that are done proactively and encouraging and teaching appropriate hand and respiratory hygiene to our student staff. As far as the health monitoring, again, this is encouraging adults and students with any kind of symptoms that are consistent with COVID or any illness really should stay home. Any person or household member or person having results of COVID must also stay home. Because again, if there's a suspicion that there is COVID in the home, then we really do want people to be staying home with results. As far as the playgrounds, facilities use, we are open for business, folks. We want to see our fields being used. We want to see our grounds being used. Just following the normal district protocols for facilities use requests through our school app. So really, when we look at this, yes, there are distancing, and yes, there are mask requirements. But otherwise, we are looking to be as normal as possible within our schools. In the event there becomes a need, our plan does also include some of those things that we would refer to as layered mitigation strategies. So in the event there's a particular spike where we see school spread, well, then we would have to go backwards on it. I do want to touch on one thing. As many people here know, I am a very strong advocate for schools. I have a loud voice in the state and connected at the state level on the Commissioner's Advisory Council and the House of Delegates to the Commissioner. And I want you to know that as a group, we are committed to trying to come up with very clear guidelines for when the mask mandate comes down, which we know is happening. How can we have metrics in place that are going to determine when the masks can come in? So if there's an infection rate in the community at a certain level, we should be able to go backwards and say, now comes the point where we haven't seen school spread, we haven't seen the cases, the community spread is at this, and or vaccination rate, whatever those metrics are that are, that the New York State Department of Health can approve, that's what we're advocating for. So that we can have that kind of clear guidance to say, all right, so Moriches, we've hit all those benchmarks, we can now take our masks off. So that is one thing that I can assure you that we are working on as well. As far as the quarantines go, we have received updated guidance on quarantines. We are obligated to report students and staff who test positive for COVID and have to perform contact tracing to identify close contacts, both vaccinated and unvaccinated, and we have to direct the 10-day quarantines. So it is still a 10-day quarantine. If you recall, it used to be 14, now it's 10. But it is, this mandate is put upon the schools to do the contact tracing. I would commend Dr. Soto. Dr. Soto last year was our COVID coordinator for the district, and he did amazing work. Such a truly professional, truly detailed, and really got it and had to have hard conversations with families and people, but really, from start to finish, Ricardo, I thank you from the bottom of my heart because the work you did was critical to having success as a school district last year. Really great stuff. And not easy, very difficult, challenging. But it is our mandate to do that again. So guess what? We got it. But if universal masking is in place, only those students and staff that test positive would be required to quarantine us. So if we do this right, other kids in school, we will not have. Last year we were, again, when you know better, you do better. That's the thought. Last year, when we had positive cases in classes, we were basically told that everyone would have to quarantine. Especially in an elementary setting where kids are interacting, and you can't account for some of that for extended periods of time. This year, we're getting different guidance. And if all students are openly masked, there will not be any quarantine risk. And vaccinated individuals will not need to quarantine. This is the slide I was telling you before. Slide on the left and the slide on the right, class 1 and class 2. The desks are 3 feet apart. What you see is the purple desk in the middle on chart 1 has a child that has COVID. If masks are on, all of those people in the green desks will not need to quarantine if they're 3 feet apart wearing masks for COVID. In class 2, a class without masks, now we would have a situation where all 9 students would have to quarantine. So it shows that for every individual case you have in your school, 8 additional students would be impacted. I am sure, I could ask for a show of hands of how many people had to quarantine. I'm sure it'll probably be everyone. I had to quarantine 3 times last year. And it's not easy to quarantine. Using apps like Instacart that I never knew existed to bring me groceries because my entire family was in quarantine. It's no fun. It is no fun, and we don't want to be doing that. And we don't want to be making those calls saying, I'm sorry, but your child sat next to somebody that tested positive for quarantine. and now you've got to quarantine. Oh, and by the way, the child's a varsity athlete has to miss 3 games this week because they have to quarantine. You don't want to do that. And so by putting a mask mandate in place in our schools, we eliminate the need to have to make those phone calls and disrupt families who I'm sure don't want that. As far as the vaccinations go, the CDC recommends, as we know, all persons eligible for COVID-19 vaccine under 12 years and up to become vaccinated. That's their recommendation. People feel very differently about it, and we have never, as a district, promoted or said people must or should get vaccinated. That is not my choice as superintendent to tell people what they should or should not do. I am reporting out what the CDC says. However, we did make it available. We held 3 vaccination clinics in this district to bring the vaccine here, to make it easier for people who wanted to do it. And so what we see in Santa Moriches is in the 11934 zip code, first dose recipients, there's 64.5% of eligible people of the eligible population have a first dose. Only 58.3%, however, have completed the series. So, you know, as far as the overall population goes, we are what would be considered in the state or county or country, I guess, as a lower vaccination community. So that doesn't mean anything other than the fact that when those metrics come out, that may impact the decisions that are made for us to, you know, with a mask mandate. But just information for everybody to see because I don't, you know, this is readily accessible on the New York State website. I'm not sure how many people really actually know that and have seen that. But clearly there is no, you know, this is a parental decision. This is an adult decision and a parental decision. So for anybody that wants to get vaccinated, you know where they are accessible. And as I indicated, as far as our instructional model, I talked a little bit before about taking everything we learned from the pandemic and the delivery of instruction and what worked, and combining that with our traditional model of instruction that we also know worked, and pulling the best out of both and creating the best environment for students to learn. Well, I think that clearly, as part of one of the commissioner's groups, I was tasked with running a group on what remote instruction might look like. And one of the things we talked about was we really need to place the emphasis on in-person instruction. And it was great to see that subsequent to that meeting, the commissioner came out with just that kind of a recommendation. That prioritizing the return to a classroom setting was the top priority for everyone in the state. Daily instruction for all students in Santa Moriches will take place in person, and that I think is critical. There is not a remote instructional model available from pre-K to K-12 in Santa Moriches schools. Obviously, students who, because of a medical necessity, cannot come to school, there has always been a mechanism for them. So if there is a reason, and it may be COVID related, but there needs to be clear medical documentation, there will be obviously an alternative instructional model presented for. But for anyone that just doesn't want to come to school, we are fully in person, and we are in person. We're here to service every student, 1,502. COVID related, non-COVID related absences have been treated just as during the pre-pandemic times. And including extended absences, we're operating just as we normally would. The students who are on the quarantine, that is something, it's an ordered quarantine. Well, then it is incumbent upon us to put in a mechanism in our individual buildings, because the models will differ between the elementary and the middle school and the high school. So since those models will differ, the individual, when those cases come up, we will be addressing those circumstances and providing very clear direction on what that looks like for students who, again, are under an ordered quarantine from subject like that. And again, I indicated that a fully remote instruction model that is in development for anybody who absolutely, for whatever reason, 100% needs that. It is a cost-saving program that is supported for our and then again, the quarantine instruction I mentioned. As far as transportation, buses are being routed at full capacity, and we are in a full return to school. I indicated earlier that it is a universal masking mandate for buses, and there is going to be assigned seating, attendance charts, those kinds of things, because again, we need to be contact tracing. Those are things we have to do. We are legally mandated to do that. Loading, we load the buses as kids get on the bus in the morning, front to back, back to front, excuse me, and then as the kids get to the school, the front seats get off in the back seats. So just a procedural thing we are doing to minimize student contact. But we will have masks on buses, windows open, when tolerable. You may have seen some of the challenges. It's not actually News 12 today about some of the driver shortages. So there are labor shortages that are impacting every industry in the country, in particular buses. So we are struggling with some of that. And clearly, it's amazing to me how the supply chain has been impacted in a number of areas. My wife needed to fix her car the other day, and it turned into a month-long repair because of disruption to the supply chain. So we are seeing those kinds of things impact us as well. As far as the social emotional well-being, we're here. We are here for the kids. I think in-person helps a lot. Remote is hard. We know that we see a higher incidence of depression, anxiety amongst kids who are in remote. I openly, very publicly, I think people know that I'm an advocate for mental health wellness, and I openly talked about my own children's struggles. And the pandemic greatly impacted my own children. I'm a father of four, from a senior in college down to a rising 7th grader. And I can tell you, I've seen it firsthand. And so I know it as a father, I know it as a superintendent, and I know it as a caring human being that we care for kids. So that is a priority for us. We did add, as I said, a new social worker plate duty, which will free up resources district-wide. We have, obviously, our mental health resources that are available for all staff this year through a grant. I had put as a priority, pre-pandemic, I had, Assembly Deal had committed to provide some money for us to get all staff trained in mental health first aid. And unfortunately, the pandemic that fell by the wayside. That was a COVID casualty, unfortunately. However, I was contacted and told that of another grant, and we'll be conducting 3 mental health first aid trainings. We'll have approximately 120 staff members trained in mental health first aid before December of this year. I think that's huge, because when kids come in to school, if we have everyone in our staff that can size up a kid and gauge whether or not they're struggling that day and recognize how important it is to meet a child with a friendly glance and a love, I think that will go a long way to support our students and make sure that every child feels supported in our setting. Mental health screenings and check-ins periodically. We do peer assessments in the middle school that are social emotional screeners, and that's helpful in determining how kids feel and recognizing that when we see 25% of adolescents, and that's what statistics tell us, have anxiety and depression, have experienced a severe depressive episode. That's trouble, and that's what's happening in our society. We do need to start thinking about these things and address them. And bring it to the forefront. They're not helpful. Parent outreach and resources certainly are available on our district's website and with our mental health counselors. We have putting in a 3-tiered system of supports for mental health and social emotional learning. Targeted support groups for different things, whether it be anxiety, depression, social skills, all kinds of things that we put in person, and with additional counseling support, we can do those things. And then focusing on celebrating everybody. It doesn't matter your race, your religion, your gender identification. None of that matters. Everyone's a human being. We don't respect the diversity of our society. As far as cafeteria and food services, once again, through grants and child nutrition grants, all students can receive breakfast and lunch at no charge. So that means that every single, and we are encouraging people to take advantage of this. Every child, no child can go hungry in the Southern School District because every single child can get breakfast and lunch here. And I think that that's critical and so important because when a child's hungry in the classroom, we cannot expect that they can learn. But being able to provide breakfast and lunch to every child is I think, a game changer for some. We will be, again, utilizing our serving lines in all buildings and having grab-and-go options. So again, bringing things back to normal as possible, including our food services. We will be utilizing flexible locations. Again, remember that mandate. Unfortunately, eating masks off means 6 feet. So we will be utilizing flexible locations for eating. And then we will also have vending machines open. We did not have vending machines last year. This year, we'll. So in summary, and a quick recap, Center Moriches Community School District, State Education Department, and government's primary focus has been on the health and safety of our kids and our staff. These documents are living documents. There's local data and metrics that we need to be considering when we're making these decisions, and we are following the guidance of the CDC, DOH, New York State Education Department. This requires a continuous assessment of all conditions on the ground and our capacities. We have different capabilities, and we need to recognize what our capabilities are to provide the highest quality education for our kids. But once again, our goal is to open as close to normal as possible without compromising safety. So social distancing 3 feet, masking indoors, minimize our quarantines. We know that. Clubs, athletics, extracurricular will run in all buildings. And our hours of operation back to normal. Individual building specific plans will be released tomorrow. Our principals, again, this is coordinated. We spoke about it, and I asked the other principals to have their presentations ready for tomorrow. So they prepared those, and very specific, more granular plans that apply to the middle school and the high school will be released. So with that, folks, I open it up to any questions or comments. Normally what we would do is, we might make educational presentations, but then what we would do is we would move toward public comment after the educational presentations. In light of the fact that this is a reopening presentation and I've given you a lot of information, we would open it up to any questions people have pertaining to just the reopening. So if people would like to ask questions, we would be happy to take those questions then. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And again, I thank the community because it really is about a community coming together. This community has shown tremendous support for the schools. For me as a superintendent, I can't thank you enough. It is a privilege and an honor to be here and serving you all because, we all know what it's about. And it's about providing the best education for kids. So thank you. And again, I'll take questions. I'll just go back over here to my team.
Thank you, Dr. Massaro. Anyone?
Much less from that. So next,
Do you want to use the mic? It would just be helpful for people in the back to show.
this is part of my
That's fine. That's fine.
talking later.
Mhm.
There's just questions and answers. Okay, good. I just want to make a statement. I do have a question about something else, but that the Delta variant is extremely contagious. That's what they know. And many vaccinated people are spreading the Delta variant. It doesn't mean that all vaccinated people are spreading it, but that is a sign. And that kind of information is being censored. And I think there's a lot of information out there that is being censored. I just want to make that statement. I think you're going to have, thank you, yes, we need more people to understand this. I think you're really going to have an extreme spread of Delta during the school, but we don't need to panic. There's medications out there to help this. And of course, people are afraid of that because it's been villainized. I had, and nice to meet you. I know we've been back and forth with it. I'm going to make one more statement here. I wrote it to Mr. Maxwell. Excuse me?
Just Mr.
Yes, ma'am, okay, sorry. I was looking at last month's agenda, which I thought was for tonight, and I thought, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to the meeting. But it gave me a real insight into what you people do. Okay, so you work very hard, and I want to thank you very, very much. I think we spoke about critical race theory, and you said there wouldn't be any of that in the school system. And I did ask you about equity, and you said there wouldn't be that in the school system either. Is there a way I can get a program on what you're doing with equity? Would that be available to the public?
We actually have a presentation that we'll be doing shortly.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so, yep, come on down.
My name is Lisa Piata. I have been in the community for 45 years. And at this point, I have 3 grandchildren in the high school. Well, I'm a life permanent specialist. I work at a pregnancy care center. I do advocating for women who want to keep their babies and help them with supplies to the babies 2 years old.
Thank you very much. Thought I saw somebody back.
A question about some of the clubs don't seem to be on here, that there's not listed.
Can I ask you to come up and just speak in the mic, only because this way everyone can hear you, especially those at home?
Can you just state your name? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Christine Buck, and I was just curious about some clubs that don't appear to be on the list, and I just didn't know if that was just like a technicality or they're just not all here. Specifically, middle school jazz band, high school jazz band, and I know there's a pit band. Just curious if it's happening or why they're not here.
Yeah. So the clubs are all basically, they come right out of the buildings. Often they're based on interest and whether or not we have something running it, that kind of thing. So honestly, right now, the clubs that we put on the agenda, that doesn't mean that's all of the clubs. What that means is the clubs are approving right now. And then as, teachers come back and as kids come back, there is some flexibility in there that more clubs could be added. So it's really kind of a question directed at the individual buildings.
Like getting an indication that some of the clubs we asked about are actually on the.
I feel like my program out of order.
Yeah.
I don't think you're on there, so.
Yeah. Because specifically you're talking about like the kick band, like we absolutely 100% had conversations about making sure we included that.
Well, I don't do high school jazz band here, so I know that's really particular to me personally, but maybe my program's out of order.
It's possible, and I would suggest an email.
Yeah.
And going here.
Okay.
Because it is a very large agenda, it's very easy
Sure,
to.
sure. Don't worry. Thank you.
Yeah, this particular agenda, our August meeting, there's a lot of hiring and a lot of personnel stuff and a lot of reopening things that come up on this agenda. So there's certainly, it's quite big. Yeah.
Thank you. I kind of figured such because when you sort of hear it from people who are running it and then it's not here, it's kind of.
Ms. Bob, you can be assured though that the music department is something that we all 100% fully support. There's high school, middle school, I think, give you a thumbs up on all those clubs.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Any other questions about the reopening plan? No? Okay. We're going to move to the committee reports then, and then we are going to get a report from our DEI committee, correct, Mr. Soto? And I think, Dr. Sarah, come on, to start. Thank you.
So, I want to speak to, I'm just really here to set the tone for a larger presentation by Dr. Soto and one of our board members who's on our bench. I came in here as a superintendent, and when I got hired as a superintendent, one of the things the board asked me to do, and then actually prior to being hired, I guess, I was asked to prepare our plan. And so I actually have the plan that I wrote almost 3 years ago. And the reason I have this plan is because when I thought about what Dr. Soto was going to present today, I thought, how did we get to this place where, and it's so in line with where we started and where the first initial conversations we had as a person who wanted to be the superintendent of Center Moriches. See, as a superintendent candidate, I had worked for about 10 years as a superintendent, but something about Center Moriches really appealed to me, or I should say a lot about Center Moriches appealed to me. And so when you don't go into these jobs thinking you're just going to walk in and smile and get the job. You do your research. And so I did that. I did the research. And what I saw was that 11 years ago, the Center Moriches School District had a population that was 2% Asian, 5% Black, 8% Hispanic, Latino, 80% white, and 4% Native American. That was the makeup of the community. And then, when I looked at it, I saw that the district that I was looking to get hired in, 10 years later, was 1% Asian, so it dropped by 1%, not much, 5.8% Black, 19.2% Hispanic Latino, 68% white, and 4.72% Native American. So by 11 percentage points, our Hispanic Latino population had more than doubled in that 10 years. And that's not just Center Moriches, that's most of the island. And our English language learners went from 5% of our population to 9% of our population. Our free and reduced price lunches went from 20% to 29%. And our students with disabilities went from 11.5% to 19%. So that's a pretty significant changing demographic in Center Moriches. Interestingly, our graduation rate went to 99%. Our Regents diploma rate went from 87% to 97%. And our advanced Regents diploma rate went from 32% to 61%. So I remember thinking, that's extraordinary progress given increasing challenges. And that was intriguing to me. And then I dug deeper and I thought, you know, what is it? What are we doing right? And what are the things that are going to be important moving forward? And I wrote this introduction. And in the introduction, I wrote about how our changing world, the world's changing at such a rapid pace, and it's becoming progressively smaller. Meaning, technology is shrinking our world. Not an uncommon thought these days. Socially, economically, politically, we're more influenced than ever by the changing global world. There's tremendous, and this has had a tremendous influence over our educational landscape. And then I kind of went on and I talked about preparing our students to be productive contributors in a more connected and globally interdependent world. I said that we want our kids to cherish their small town roots, but balance this with being intentional about assisting them to develop a greater sense of international mindedness. That our goal is to inspire children to be inquisitive problem solvers who can process, analyze, and synthesize this enormous amount of information that's at their fingertips and make evaluative decisions to create a better world by collaborating with others. And so that was about the International Baccalaureate and some of the things that it does and the kind of education it provides for our kids in this international mindedness. And I thought, when I came in here, I remember thinking one of the things I wanted to do was join groups like the Long Island Consortium for Equity and Excellence, because it's not about any race, it's not about any particular thing. It's about celebrating the diversity of all kids. We have children from all races, as you see. We've got children from all kinds of religious backgrounds. We've got children that are gender non-conforming. We've got children that are any kind of diversity you can imagine in our schools. And to not service each and every one of those kids to the best of our ability would be a failure on our part for any one of those kids. And so we talked about that. We talked about that as a board. And so the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is one that is focused on not critical race theory. It's not our focus. What our focus is celebrating, not tolerating. Tolerating people is an offensive word in so many ways. Celebrating diversity is something where the International Baccalaureate Program can provide the most rigorous curriculum for every child in the San Moriches and give access to every child to opportunities that otherwise they might not have access to. And that's extraordinary. Kids can get into the greatest colleges in the world with an Ivy diploma, and we're offering. And that's fabulous. But we're also offering opportunities for every child to take all kinds of classes at every level. They can pursue occupational education classes, or they can pursue the highest academic rigor possible. And so for us, it's about providing opportunities for all kids. And that in mind, we went on this journey. And part of the journey was developing an equity in education plan so that the diversity of all students is celebrated. And so I'm going to introduce Dr. Soto and Danielle Dench, who will present our equity in education.
Thank you, Dr. Mazzara. Thank you for that great introduction. Thank you for the framework that you established based on the work that we did. And this evening kind of takes me back to a conversation that I had with Dr. Mazzara, I want to say about a year ago. I remember last summer, I was sitting in his office and he was sitting and talking about diversity. He was talking about some of the highlights that we mentioned in terms of the change in the demographics that we've seen in Center Moriches over the last 10 years. And I distinctly recall us talking about establishing a DEI committee. And I think before he established a sentence out of his mouth saying, would you, consider facilitating that conversation, I just volunteered to do it. You see, for me, diversity is really who I am. My background, I grew up in the city. I'm of Hispanic descent. In my household, English was a second language. I didn't really speak English until I entered elementary school. My grandmother, my brother Maria, was a pivotal person in my home. She lived with us. And I still recall as a child of welcoming people into our home. And our home, just like a lot of cultures in society, was a home that kind of celebrated people through food. So I remember sitting at our dinner table, having rice and beans, arroz con pollo, which is chicken and rice, and pernil, which is roasted pork in the Spanish way of making. And one of the things that I loved about my grandmother Maria was her welcoming spirit. She always accepted everyone. She embraced everyone. She made everyone feel welcomed in our home. She made everyone feel included in our home. And that sort of impression stuck with me my entire life. Not only that, she actually came from Spain. So she helped me to appreciate travel, different cultures, different experiences, art, music. So as an early youngster, I would say about 20 years old, I started traveling the world. So I traveled back to New York many times. I scaled the Great Wall of China. I went to safari in Africa. I saw the pyramids, and all of this was to sort of develop my own sense of culture, my own sense of diversity within the global sort of arena, outside of just me in the city. And you can argue that the city is a melting pot. I had friends of every different ethnicity, every different sexual preference. So it was something that I still wanted to branch out even beyond that. So when we started this journey, it has been an amazing journey. We started, I want to say October 15th was our first meeting, if we're going to get into that. But the purpose of this evening's meeting or presentation is to kind of walk the committee, or excuse me, walk the board as well as the community through the process that we followed. Why did we form the committee? What did we do in the year that we worked together as a committee? And what do we plan to do in the future? So I'm looking around the room, I see quite a few of my committee members that are here, so thank you for coming, I really appreciate it. And I want to say thank you for bearing with me. I know that some of our meetings were somewhat difficult. I think everyone knows that all of our committee meetings last year were virtual, so we utilized Zoom, which is a great platform, but when you're trying to cover such dense material, it can be a little challenging. And I think my wife wanted to kick me almost every meeting because I think every meeting lasted about 2 hours. And it wasn't just because of the depth of information that we covered during the meeting, it's because of the conversations we had. And because of the debates and the going back and forth as committee members. We have one of the largest committees in the district. We had about 22 members. The committee was comprised of teachers, administrators. Dr. Massaro sat on the committee. I had 2 board members, Mr. Babsy and of course Ms. Stench. We had about 7 secondary students. We had parents. It was an amazing committee. It was an amazing experience. So this evening, we're going to, like I said, walk you through the process. And I'm very fortunate to have Ms. Stench with me, our Vice President of the Board of Education, who agreed a couple of days ago to join me, and we sat together to review the presentation, and I'm sure she's going to do an amazing job. So the first thing we're going to look at is how did we as a committee define DEI? So for that, I'm going to have Ms. Stench kind of walk us through that.
Hello, everyone. I'm not a good public speaker, so bear with me. Okay, so diversity is the presence of differences that may include race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, ethnicity, nationality, socioeconomic status, language, ability, disability, age, religious commitment, or political perspective. Equity is promoting justice, impartiality, and fairness within the procedures, processes, and distribution of resources by institutions or systems. Tackling equity issues and understanding requires an understanding of the root causes of outcome disparities within our society. Equity is getting the resources that students need in order to be successful. Inclusivity is an outcome to ensure those that are diverse actually feel and/or are welcome. Inclusion outcomes are met when you, your institution, and your program are truly invited to all. To the degree to which diverse individuals are able to participate fully in the decision-making process and developmental opportunities within an organization or group.
The next thing we're going to look at is, as I mentioned initially, how and why the DI committee was formed. So I'm gonna ask the audience to kind of bear with me. I think my committee members that are out there know that I can't go to a meeting without at least showing one video. So this is the video that I'm going to show. And actually, this is the first video that I showed to the committee on October 15th. So I think, Dr. Ojo, you would appreciate this, because I think you would. And I think it really gives a good visual of
Island homeowners, if you have a PSEG meter like this on the side of your house, you can get paid to go solar for no money spent out of pocket. It costs nothing to install.
there's an overwhelming need to fight prejudice and inequality, when people decide to change, people decide to act, they can make a remarkable difference, and we are all stronger for it. Our world is changing faster than ever. Populations are aging. Wealth in emerging markets is growing.
When there's an overwhelming need to fight prejudice and inequality, when people decide to change, and people decide to act, they can make a remarkable difference, and we are all stronger for it. Our world is changing faster than ever. Populations are aging. Wealth in emerging markets is growing. Climate change is a constant challenge. Open our minds to different ways of thinking. We can do great things. It's time to change, and it's time to act. Every one of us can take responsibility to make a difference and lead the way. So open your mind. Be
our conversation. I just want to mention something about that video too. The reason I showed it because I really felt that that was a good visual representation of what diversity, equity, and inclusivity means to a system, whether it's a system of adults, a system of children, and what it means when you don't have that in place, how it internally makes individuals feel, and how it eliminates productivity, and in turn can sort of truly affect individuals' self-esteem and the way they perceive themselves and the way they interact with one another. So that was one of the driving forces behind why we formed the committee. The other one was the fulfillment of a Board of Education goal, which is the 2021 Board of Education goal number 5, and I'm just going to read it in its entirety. Diversity, equity, and inclusivity to foster a positive school culture. We pledge to operate within the district's mission statement, and to use this statement as well as our district policy to create policies and procedures that support equitable practices to ensure educational excellence for all students within the St. Moriches Union Free School District. So that was part of the conversations that we had as a committee. It was one of the driving forces, and I apologize for the glasses, I won't be able to see the computer. Beautiful. And the third piece is something that Dr. Massaro touched upon, which is the alignment to the International Baccalaureate program, which we have, which we are looking at, or which we actually have in place, at least in grades 6 to 12. We're looking at it at the elementary level as we speak. And the IB supports diversity, equity, and inclusivity in the sense that IB supports equity, education for all students, meaning education should be available to all students at all times. Education that is equitable, meaning that it provides the necessary supports and resources to ensure that a student has every opportunity to reach success. IB supports the teaching of diversity. Diversity is believed to be a tool to help a student to have a more well-rounded education, a wider perspective of the world outside of Center Moriches, wherever, city or town you may reside in, and to understand that there are different perspectives and different cultures and different experiences that may enlighten you to a point that may help you to sort of change your framework or your way of thinking. And finally, IB supports inclusivity, where an educational environment should include the voices of all students, its staff, parents, community members, all stakeholders should be involved in that process. This is something that IB supports. This is something that our DEI committee supports. And finally, our last meeting was on October 15th. And the next piece that we are going to look at is actually the work of the committee that we engaged in during the 2020 and 21 school year. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Lynch to look at this. That is the link. So if I could just make a comment, every item that you see in red is a hyperlink to the actual document or to the actual website that supports that particular topic that we're discussing. The entire presentation will be available on the website tomorrow. The links will be live. You can just link onto it. It will take that particular document that Ms. Dench referenced, it's about 64 pages. And it will take a tremendous amount of time to cover. The committee looked at that document alone for about 2 months.
Okay. So with the DEI committee, we met monthly via Zoom from October to June. Like Dr. Soto said, we did look at some culturally responsive sustaining educational framework. We looked at different school districts, policies that they had, and we reviewed this culturally responsive sustaining education framework, like you said, for a couple of months. We did some book studies, and then as a group, we developed some committee initiatives. One of them that we did was the No Place for Hate. And just a little background of what the No Place for Hate initiative is it was established by the Anti-Defamation League. It's a 4-phase approach, which includes creating a theme based on the needs of the district. It implements 3 activities to engage students and staff and to become more effective allies. The theme and activities are carried out at all building levels. There's also a pledge that everyone signs. The elementary school already received their designation last year, and this year we're hoping to, working with the committee, to carry out the designation district-wide into the middle school and into the high school. It's collaborative, student-driven, and customizable. Teachers get support in addressing difficult and challenging topics, and students feel heard and understood. We also have a Board of Education equity policy that's based on the New York State School Board Association's framework, and we tailored it to our district. And we also have a district equity and education plan.
Thank you. So now this is going to transition right into the plan. So once again, these links will be available, and I will actually make this title red. I apologize. But so I'm going to walk the community and the board through the plan in 2 different ways. The plan itself is pretty extensive. It's about 11 pages. And let me just talk about sort of how the plan was formed we, as Ms. Dench indicated, we spent numerous months looking at, I think the committee members wanted to kill me because every month I would send them documents upon documents of things that I wanted them to look at in preparation to the next meeting. So we looked at different equity plans that were developed by different districts. We looked at supplemental material. We looked at resource materials. And we took all of the materials that we looked at, and of course the conversations we had, we looked at the demographics of the district as documents that were mentioned, and we came up with what is called an equity and education plan. So the equity and education plan, it took us about 8 months to create after we got the initial conversation going in terms of getting sort of the common language established within the committee members. We began building a draft, I want to say sometime in March. We developed a first draft in April. I forwarded the draft to the committee, we reviewed it, and I would say in May, June, we finalized it, and that's what we are presenting this evening. So I'm going to walk the committee, I'm going to walk the audience through the initial plan, and then I'm going to kind of go back to the presentation because I think the plan might be a little overwhelming to take in, at least visually. So this is the plan. It's based on what we define as priority areas, and it is adopted from, as Ms. Dench mentioned, the CRSE framework from the New York State Department of Education. And that framework is divided into 4 principles that New York State Department of Education created. And this particular priority area is adopted based on principle 3 and 4 of that framework. And we identified 2 goals that align with the priority area. And then the plan itself is divided by a goal. The goal is designed to sort of meet the priority area, and then the steps in implementation, and then the stakeholder groups involved in the plan, the timeline, the resources, and the budget implications, and finally the evaluation checklist. So as you can see, it is pretty involved. There is a lot of hyperlinks, and this also will be available on the website for anyone who is interested in looking at it and taking sort of a deep dive into it. So it goes on and on. So this is the priority area 2. So I'm going to go back now to the presentation because I think it's just for visual purposes. I think it's easier for the audience to kind of digest it. So as I mentioned a moment ago, we established 2 priority areas as a committee. The first one is based on the principles 3 and 4 of the CRSE framework, and it reads implement inclusive curriculum instruction and assessments K-12. That's pre-K-12 at this point. But goal number 1 is to conduct K-12 inclusive and assessment audits to ensure that diverse representations are included in the curriculum and provide students with multiple opportunities to have experiences with people from races, cultures, and backgrounds different from their own. Goal number 2 reads, provide all stakeholders with ongoing learning opportunities on how to develop awareness regarding explicit and implicit bias, prejudice in all its forms, and culturally responsive pedagogy, and inclusive practices that support the diverse experiences and identity of our students. Priority number 2 reads create a safe and welcoming environment of dignity, respect, empowerment, and inclusivity. And that was adopted from the CRS framework principle number 1. The only one that we did sort of leave out in terms of our perspective is number 2, and it calls for developing a rigorous curriculum, which we thought as a committee is kind of covered within our internal curriculum that we have catered for. So the goal number 1 for that priority area is recognize how prejudice and explicit implicit bias manifest in our classrooms by uncovering underlying problems and developing strategies to address them. Number 2 is recommend to the Board of Education the adoption of an equity, inclusivity, and diversity in education policy, which Ms. Dench talked about a moment ago. Now I'm going to kind of walk the committee through what a typical goal would look like and how, and some of the steps that we wrote up to meet that goal. So this particular goal is goal number 2, which applies to priority number 1. And it reads, provide all stakeholders with ongoing learning opportunities on how to develop awareness regarding explicit, implicit bias, prejudice in all its forms, and culturally responsive pedagogy and inclusive practices that support the diverse experiences and identities of our students. So with that, we created in each particular goal, and this is why I kind of walked away from looking at the plan as a whole, we created anywhere from 3 to 6 implementation steps. So I'm just going to walk you through these because I thought that these were sort of the easiest to kind of digest. The goal number 3 of that particular goal is incorporate a CRSE agenda items at all faculty meetings. The stakeholders involved with that will be principals and building administration. The timeline will be September 2021 and ongoing throughout the school year. And the district developed timeline with topics, and the evaluation is faculty meetings agendas. The steps of implementation number 4 is develop collegiate servers, focus on CRSE and DEI at each building. Principals, building administration are the individual stakeholders involved in the implementation of those steps, of that particular step, and the timeline is the same as the previous timeline, and the resources is districts develop timeline of topics, and the way to look at that in terms of the evaluation check-in is looking at collegiate circle agendas and minutes. Finally, it's the consideration of appointing a DEI liaison in each building. The individuals involved in that would be district building administration, district administration. Timeline is September 2021. District supported stipend is the resources provide training opportunities to the DEI liaison and liaison reports that will be quarterly in nature, which we're going to talk about in a moment. I just want to talk about number 5 for a minute because Ms. Bench and I had an interesting conversation about this morning, where we thought, should we take out the word consider? Because this is something that we, as the Board of Education, the Board of Education supported wholeheartedly. We actually already have it in place. So we did appoint individuals for this position, which is great. And they will be able to hit the ground running in September. So, but I wanted to keep in consideration because when we developed the plan, we developed it with the entire DEI committee. So I didn't really want to play around too much with the language because it's something that the committee put a lot of time and effort and energy into it, and I didn't want to necessarily change it too much. So it is something that is accomplished already in terms of that particular goal. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to the bench to look at the future work that we have done.
So this is our future work. We're always looking for new members. So join whenever you can. We are part of the Eastern Suffolk BOCES DEI co-serve, and what that entails is we have professional development available to us. It's customizable to our district. We're able to access the database and the materials and resources to provide to our teachers and staff. We can correspond with outside consultants, and like I said, we can get support and resources from the DEI co-serve. Dr. Soto did mention that we do have building level DEI liaisons in place. They're going to be working with Dr. Soto and the committee. They're going to be participating in professional development and actually doing a turnkey and coming back and training our teachers and staff. We'll have a quarterly review of equity in the education plan so that we can review our goals, assess what's working and what's not working, and adjust it as we go. The no place for designation district-wide, that's our goal as well. For, like I said before, we have been designated in the elementary school, but we're trying to go to the middle school and to the high school. And lastly, we have the Board of Education Equity Policy, which was based on the New York State School Board Association's framework, and we are tailoring and customizing it to the needs of our district.
There's just one other thing that I would like to mention to the board. If you could develop a clause in my contract that whenever I give any future presentations, that Ms. Bench is my co-presenter. I would appreciate that.
See what we can do.
Okay, thank you, George. I appreciate that.
Thank you, and thank you to the committee Thank you, Ms. Dench, for all the hard work you put into something that is certainly going to be impactful for every single child in this nation. Really appreciate the work that you did.
My pleasure. At this time, if the board or anyone has any questions, we'll be more than happy to share.
If anybody has any questions, comments with regard to this?
While people are thinking about it, George, I'll just comment.
Sorry, Mark?
I'd like to just comment.
Oh, sure.
So I was actually, I sat on the committee and participated. The board, I would have to say, is committed to receiving community input in all its forms as much as we can get. It's great to see people here tonight. I think one of the best forms of community input that there is, for me, is participation on board committees. So I would urge anyone that would like to learn more, provide more input. There's always room for more people on this committee and all the committees. More voices, more perspectives. That's what this committee is really all about. I enjoyed it very much. I have to say, Ricardo was an equal taskmaster. We had a lot to do. It was all manageable. Nobody was shamed if they didn't do an assignment correctly. And he actually did keep 1 or 2 meetings with the not out of time.
I tried.
But I have to say, I learned a lot. It really was engaging discussion. All of the meetings. It really pushes you to think what's your own perspective, where does your perspective come from, what are the limitations in your perspective, how do you feel, why do you feel the way you do. So it was really interesting and once or twice even uncomfortable to look and be introspective in that way and see how it applies to the world at large. So again, a little shameless self-promotion, please come and join the committees. They're forming again. I'll be meeting when year starts. I'd like to have more people.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you. Anyone else on the board or in the public of this presentation? We'll also do public participation for anything on the agenda now, to speak specifically about that. If you have any questions regarding the rest of the agenda or comments, now we'll go through the agenda and then there'll be a public section again at the end for comments about it. Good? Okay. That brings us to the approval of minutes. Board of Education is asked to accept the minutes of the following meetings as prepared by the district clerk. Minutes of the meeting of the reorg Board of Ed on July 7th, 2021. Minutes of the meeting of the regular Board of Ed on July 7th, 2021. Motion. Second. All in favor? Yes, motion carried unanimously. Be it resolved, the Board of Ed, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, accepts the following financial reports: internal claims audit report, June 2021. Motion? Second? All in favor? Yes. Motion carries unanimously. That brings us to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda items are approved by a single vote unless they are removed from the consent item prior to the vote. Motion.
Second? All in favor? Yes, motion carries unanimously. Just bear with me, this is a very long. I want to be sure we understand. That brings us to the public session. I'm sorry, we have board docs now, and I can just do this online. Yep, I think we're good. Yep. So there's a 3-minute, so where's the general public? So the guidelines are 3-minute time limit per participant. Members of the public who desire to address or question the board on any topic related to board work are welcome to do so at this time. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to no more than 3 minutes. To appoint a spokesperson, concern as a group concern, and 2 subsequent verbal presentations with written reports if necessary. Doesn't look like you have.
Yes, absolutely.
We have to ask for experience, we have middle school, high school opportunity. What about our gym?
So we're leaving some flexibility in there. That's going to be part of the building level plans. You know, we're not necessarily opposed, but we do have there are some tactical issues with the lockers in terms of providing appropriate supervision for kids and things like that to ensure distancing. So locker rooms are a little bit more challenging than the regular lockers. So it's certainly some consideration, and you know, we're going to make accommodations to make sure the athletes get changed appropriately. But that's something that I did speak with Jeremy Hill about, and Jeremy will be addressing. So, got it?
Thank you, Robert.
Good question.
Ms. Vigliotti, you're on the list. Would you like to? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I face you guys? So we're to have all those people.
Whatever you're comfortable, you can turn it.
Thank you, because I'm really, not that I'm not speaking to the board, but I am speaking to the community. School board members and Dr. Sarah, thank you for your time. Paper and cloth, one you had asked about my credentials. I do a lot of study of reports and studies that are censored. Paper and cloth masks are only 3% effective when the virus is aerosolized. Let's not forget the science. The virus has over a 99% survival rate. Mandating, which is not lawful, is in violation of parental bill of rights, which states parents have the sole authority to govern their child's medical protocol. There are studies. Brown University professor Emily Oster launched a COVID dashboard project August 2020 to make up for the lack of a coordinated federal effort to track COVID. Remember that, a lack of coordinated federal effort to track COVID. Districts and schools opted in. 12 million students, 20% of all school enrollment, including New York, Texas, Massachusetts, and Florida. There was a clear shift. Masked school students saw a case rate 30% higher than non-masked. Staff numbers were higher, but they were better than the non-masked. Gainesville, Florida, 6 masks worn from 6 to 8 hours were sent to a lab. Let's not forget the science. The control, remember when you have a study, you need a control. The control was a t-shirt of one of the students and unworn masks. Findings on the control were only protein. Protein is not a pathogenic to humans. What was found on those 6 masks were bacteria, parasites, fungi, pneumonia-causing bacteria. No virus was detected. TB, meningitis, food poisoning, diphtheria, and staph, and others that I cannot even pronounce intelligently were found. These cause fever, ulcers, acne, yeast infections, strep throat, and more. Let's not forget the science. Masks provide a nice, warm, moist environment. Masks do not live on or in a controlled environment. They live on or in surfaces, bathrooms, pockets, and floors. Our children have an incredible immune system. Last year, 4.2 million children tested positive for COVID. Unfortunately, 0.008% died. The flu season, which is a 6-month season, from 2018 to 2019, 480 children died. That was more than 1.5 years of COVID. Masks dehumanize us, serve as a constant reminder to be fearful and afraid. The Center for Evidence-Based Medicine at Oxford University conducted 6 international studies. Mind you, all these studies I'm talking about are censored. Why are they censored? Who's covering the CDC? From these 6 studies, simply no significant effect. Let's not forget the science. Masks harm. I ask you to look under Frontline COVID Critical Care Alliance and American Frontline Doctors. There is a 6-hour summit on masks and vaccines. It's very important that we start opening up our eyes and look beyond the CDC, because the fox is in the hen house. Thank you very much.
Thank you. you very much. That was the only name on our sheet that had signed up to speak. It looks like we have somebody who. This is Miguel.
Yes, we are.
Printed,
We are
coming in
getting
now,
a
school calendar.
printed calendar, absolutely 100%.
Okay, when can we expect that?
Can you expect that? No, you're right, it's for the calendar.
The printer has gave you the final edit today, and I had a few corrections, so I get a hard copy by hoping Friday for Monday, and then once I say go, it should be in the full mailboxes by first day of school, and there'll be something to look at online, probably by next Wednesday. Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was a long walk for that question. Anyone else? Oh, that's what I'm okay. Just the other meetings. Motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Yes, motion carried unanimously. The next Board of Education meeting will be September 22nd, executive 6, next meeting approximately 7. We are planning on at some point returning to district office. That's where it's listed right now. If we feel like we need the additional space, we'll move it to this location again. So, and keep your eyes peeled for that, okay? Thank you so much for everybody who took their time to come tonight. We appreciate it. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.